Bolt disappeared into a misty gray sky. Molly Mullen, a spokeswoman for Fontanelle Forest, said Davis has been a good friend and donor to the raptor recovery program. The program invited him to participate in the release. I was thrilled to be able to do it, Davis said, adding that he hopes the event brings attention to wildlife conservation. Bolt was found in May by fishermen about 10 miles from where he was released. He had a mysterious head wound. Dr. Colleen Stice, an Omaha plastic surgeon, determined that the wound was an electrical burn, possibly caused by a power line. The burn had destroyed the tissue and feathers on top of the eagle's head, leaving a thin layer of bone covering the eagle's brain. The bird this summer has undergone rehab at Fontanelle Forest Raptor Recovery and then underwent a skin graft at the Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium. Feathered skin was removed from the eagle's inner leg and attached to his head. The feathers on top of the bird's head, which is now brown and white, will continue to grow. The skin graft was an essential step for the bird to be released into the wild. Without the feathers, the bird would suffer dangerous sunburn. Mullen said the eagle recovered sooner than expected.
Good story. Well, here's some short items from around the state and the area. From Gering. A Gering woman accused of defrauding her grandfather and the families of music students has been sentenced to prison. Stacia Keener was sentenced Friday to 4 to 8 years for 2 counts of felony theft and another year for 5 misdemeanor theft counts. The sentences are to be served at the same time. Keener pleaded guilty to the charges in July. Prosecutors say Keener took money from the parents of her students to pay for a Disney World trip, but never bought tickets or scheduled it. Officials say she also scammed her 84-year-old grandfather out of more than $250,000 over a 4-year period. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A Nebraska tribe has received a more than $17,000 grant meant to help address elder abuse throughout its 15-county service area in Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. The Ponca tribe received the Elder Abuse Innovation Grant Award through the National Indigenous Elder Justice Initiative Innovation Program. Andrea Rodriguez is the tribe's domestic violence program coordinator. She says the grant allows the tribe to offer outreach and prevention work on elder abuse. Rodriguez says the tribe can also develop a section of the Ponca tribal code that'll better serve indigenous elders. She hopes the awareness and outreach effort helps the domestic violence program discover undetected or unserved cases because of a lack of resources. The program's services cover advocacy, medical care, and other resources. From Hershey, officials say water levels will be lower at Lake Maloney because of a gate replacement project upstream along the Sutherland Canal in western Nebraska. Nebraska Public Power District says a 1950s era set of gates south of Hershey is being replaced because of age and condition. The canal flow into Lake Maloney will stop by the end of September and won't resume until the project's expected completion by early November. The lake level is expected to drop 4 feet as the canal runs dry for the work. Fish may be trapped in some spots, and the district is working with Nebraska Game and Parks on issuing salvage permits.
From Lincoln, 2 University of Nebraska Lincoln professors defended robust academic freedom and free speech Monday evening outside the Nebraska Union. About 50 professors and students attended the approximately 40-minute rally. A few carried signs such as "Don't gag our educators," "Academic freedom is democracy," and "Support UNL faculty." The rally was prompted by a dust-up last month involving graduate student lecturer Courtney Lawton, a member of the English department, who flipped off a sophomore who was recruiting for the conservative organization Turning Point USA. Lawton also said on a video captured by the student that the student, quote, wants to destroy public schools, public universities, hates DACA kids. DACA is the 2012 order that temporarily protects from deportation certain children and young adults who were brought to the country illegally by their parents. UNL this month removed Lawton from her teaching duties, citing concern for Lawton's and her students' safety. Lawton said she had received threats online from, quote, right-wing extremists, unquote. One of the professors who spoke Monday evening, Julia Schleck, said Lawton received a letter from UNL administrators criticizing her behavior. Schleck, an UNL English professor and president of the Nebraska chapter of the American Association of University Professors, said academic freedom is vital for teachers, researchers, and students. Academic freedom ensures that a wide variety of opinions will be heard, she said. Schleck said in an interview that there was concern on campus that UNL had caved to pressure from outside the university. Students are deprived of Lawton's classroom work, Schleck said. Courtney Lawton is an award-winning teacher, Schleck said. She was acting as a citizen expressing her political views and not as a teacher. Fran Kay, also an English professor, said in an interview that she wouldn't personally have flipped off the student. Nevertheless, Kay said, Lawton was a private citizen at the time and the student was as well. Lawton wasn't behaving in her role as an instructor, Kay said. UNL spokesman Steve Smith said in an email Monday that the University of Nebraska-Lincoln cultivates, supports an environment that protects academic freedom, allows a robust exchange of ideas to be expressed, and different viewpoints to be respected. Kay said academic freedom is true patriotism. It isn't flag waving and saying America is always right, Kay said. It's observing, she said, what can be done better so mistakes aren't repeated.
A state program created to address a backlog of bridge maintenance projects is beginning to make a difference in some Nebraska counties. The Nebraska Department of Transportation awarded a total of $4 million to nearly 70 county bridge projects in January. Counties across the state have applied to the program since last year in hopes of receiving money for failing bridges. Colfax County Highway Superintendent Marks Arps has received money for 2 of the 5 bridge projects he applied for. The 2 bridges are located east of Howells. One totally fell in. The road is closed, Arps said. They were some of the worst ones. The amount of grant funding allotted for both projects is $107,000, which Arps said will cover some of the materials. We would have done it anyway, he said of the repairs. The grant releases funds for other bridges and other projects that are in dire need of being replaced. Arps said he'll apply for the funds again, but that his county will be given lower priority because it already received money. Platte, Polk, and Butler counties have all applied for the program, but none of them received funding. Highway Superintendent Terry Wicht said he plans to apply again with 5 bridge projects in mind. The program is scheduled to end in 2023.
Thank you, Don. We're going to go now to our obituaries and funeral arrangements. In the Omaha World Herald, this is what's listed today. Assam, Rynette L. Assam, and that's spelled A-H capital S-A-M, 54. A complete notice will follow later. Johnny Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory is handling this arrangement. Buchanan, Dorothea L. Dottie Buchanan, 67. Services Friday, September 22nd at 10:30 a.m. at the Bel Air Chapel. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Ralston Community Theater or Nebraska Humane Society. Hebe Hoffman Court, Cutler Bel Air Chapel is handling these services. Campagna, Joseph A. Campagna, 93. He was a veteran of the Army. His celebration of life services will be announced. Memorials to the Children's Make-A-Wish Foundation. Costanzo, Mary Lou Costanzo, 62. Memorial service 10 a.m. Tuesday, September 19th at Forest Lawn Historical Chapel. Memorials to the Notre Dame Sisters or the Nebraska Humane Society. Green, Richard R. Green. He was 59. A complete notice will follow later. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is handling this service. Grizzle, C. David Grizzle, 59. Memorial service Thursday, September 21st, 10:30 a.m. at First Christian Church in Plattsmouth. Interment, Oak Hill Cemetery, Plattsmouth. Memorials to the family. Dave requested casual attire. Wear your jeans. Roby Funeral Home is handling the service. Hanson, Byron L. Hanson, 82. He served in the U.S. Army. Funeral service Friday, 11 a.m. at the Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Funeral Home in Council Bluffs. In lieu of flowers, send donations to the mensafoundation.org. Hawes, Margaret L. Hawes, 66. Memorial visitation with the family Wednesday from 4 to 6 p.m. at the 2nd Street Chapel. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the Boy Scouts of America or the YMCA of the Rockies. John E. Gentleman Mortuary Crematory at 72nd Street Chapel, handling these arrangements. Healy, Robert D. Healy, 90. He was a veteran. A private family service will be held. John A. Gentleman Mortuary and Crematory at Pacific is handling those arrangements. Huff, Norma J. Huff, 73. Funeral service Thursday, September 21st at 10 a.m. at Bellevue Memorial Chapel. That's who's also handling the arrangements. Caslin, Stephen C. Caslin, 66. A complete notice will follow. These are being handled by Heapy Hoffman Dwar, Cutler Bel-Air Chapel. Luders, Frances D. Fran Luders, 82. She was from Ralston. Graveside service Thursday, 11 a.m., Omaha National Cemetery. Lund, Dorothy E. Landstrom, Lund, 96. Complete notice will follow. The arrangements are being taken care of by Heapy Hoffman Dwar, Cutler Bel-Air Chapel. Mitchell, Robert E. Mitchell, Sr. of Morris Station, Georgia, 77. Service 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 20th at the Tabernacle of Faith, COGIC, 2404 Fort Street in Omaha. Excuse me. Moore, Kristen L. Mesamore Moore, 57. Memorial service Wednesday, September 20th at 11 a.m. at Faith Christian Church. Memorials to Faith Christian Church or the Nebraska Humane Society. Arrangements by Heapy Hoffman Ward, Cutler Bel-Air Chapel. Pupkies, Leonard L. Larry Pupkies Jr., age 62. Private family services will be held in lieu of flowers. Memorials may be made in Larry's name to Holy Name Catholic Church in Catholic School in Omaha, Nebraska. Sedlick, Norman Frank Sedlick, 84. Funeral service 2 p.m. followed by burial on Wednesday, September 20th at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home and Memorial Park. Memorials will be directed by the family. West Lawn Hillcrest is handling this. Sullivan, Robert, let's start over. Sullivan, William Roger Sullivan, 82. He served in the U.S. Air Force. Services Thursday, 10:30 a.m. at Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Funeral Home in Council Bluffs. Military rites by the Offutt Air Force Base Honor Guard. Family will direct any memorials. I'm going to spell this name, Vajgrt. George Ludwig Vajgrt, Vajgrt, 75. He was a veteran. Mass of Christian burial, 10:30 a.m., Thursday, September 21st at St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Memorials may be made to the family for future designation. Zabka Funeral Home in Seward is making these arrangements. Whitted, Levon D. Whitted, 78. Services are pending with Bowman Funeral Parlor in Garden City, Idaho. Weidelwilt, Patricia M. Weidelwilt, 56. Services Thursday, September 21st at Kramer Funeral Home at 11 a.m. with luncheon to follow. Kramer Funeral Home is handling this. Yost, Helen M. Yost, 92. Services Thursday, September 21st at 11 a.m. with visitation 1 hour prior at West Lawn Hillcross Funeral Home. Memorial contributions to Discovery Presbyterian Church.
Thanks, Bev. Now we'll find out the names from the Lincoln Journal Star. The first is for Bain, B-A-Y-N-E, David, age 66. More information to follow. Becker, Tom H. Becker, age 84 of Lincoln, a U.S. Army veteran. Memorials to Nebraska Public Radio or World Wildlife Fund. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Bergman, Donna B. Bergman, age 90 of rural Ceresco. Memorials to Juvenile Diabetes or the Alzheimer's Association. No funeral home, but graveside services 11 a.m. Wednesday at Eagle Cemetery in Eagle, Nebraska. Campbell, Carol D. Campbell, age 66 of Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be made to Carol Campbell's honor to the Lincoln Children's Zoo. Roper & Sons can provide you with details. Chul, C-H-U-O-L, Martha Niabal Chul, age 55. Memorials can be directed to the family for future designation. Any questions can be answered by Buthurst, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Fallows, Charlotte Martha Fallows, age 87 of Lincoln. Memorials to Christ Lutheran Church. No funeral home has been provided. Memorial service 10:30 a.m. Thursday at Christ Lutheran Church. Hall, Dr. Richard E. Hall, age 93 of Ashland, a U.S. Army veteran. Memorials in lieu of flowers to the family for the Carr Cemetery Trust or the Ashland City Library. Wyuka Funeral Home handling the arrangements. There will be military rites at the Wyuka Cemetery. Hanson, Carol S. Hanson, age 75 of Lincoln. Mazer and Love Funeral Home can provide you with any answers to any questions you might have. Hargens, Eileen Tobiasen Hargens, Hargens. No age has been provided. It's just friends and family will celebrate her life 2 to 7 p.m. September 25 at 2147 South 49th Street, Lincoln. Kuntz, Maxine I. Kuntz, age 91, Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home, handling the arrangements. Lubert, Joan Hagerman Lubert, age 57, Thousand Oaks, California. Services will be held at the Agora Bible Fellowship in California. An interment will be at the Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. She was originally from Nebraska. Mangenson, Everett F. Magnuson, age 76 from Lincoln. More information to follow. Pavlish, Josephine Pavlish, age 52. It just says memorials to the cat house. There may be more information to follow. Pettinger, Pierre Pettinger Sr., age 93 of Lincoln. Buttress Mazer and Love Funeral Home will be handling the arrangements. Schneider, Lori and Jeff Schneider. They died in a car accident in Arkansas. Services, they died September 16th in a car accident in Arkansas. Services are pending at Buttress Mazer and Love Funeral Home. Schoenrock, Helen T. Schoenrock, age 86 of Fairbury. Memorial services, September 20. Gertis Meyer Funeral Home in Fairbury are in charge of the arrangements. Stephen E. Sim, age 66 of Lincoln. Memorials to Special Olympics, Matt Talbot Kitchen and Outreach, or Homeless Shelter. Roper & Sons can provide you with the arrangements. And the final notice in today's Journal Star is for White. Doris Ann White, Nee Kumpf, that's Kumph. Doris was 85 years old of Shelby. Memorials are suggested to the Shelby Senior Center, Shelby Fire and Rescue, or the Shelby United Methodist Church. Dubas, D-U-B-A-S, Funeral Home of Osceola and Stromsburg has been entrusted with the arrangements. And Bev, those are the notices in today's Lincoln Journal Star.
Thank you, Don. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
And we thank you very much, Don Van and
just
Don Ledick,
read
for
right.
reading the
When
first
I'm
one
reading
of
it,
today's
it's-
Omaha World Herald and the
It
Lincoln
should
Journal
be,
Star.
is,
And
not
we
all.
will be back to both of our stars. after
And there
we
you
take
are,
a short
hot
break.
reading it. Makes
And
you
the
sound
Makes
first
you
thing
sound
I'd like
like
to
this
do
guy's
now
dumb.
is to present the senior
Okay.
Do you have any,
stories?
with today's menu.
You know, the one about the eagle might be good, or the whatever
Greetings.
that was.
This is Jane with the
Falcon.
senior
Read it
home menu
Oh, did you already read the
for
Falcon?
Tuesday, September
Okay.
19th.
That wasn't that
Curry
good.
of
No.
meatball, over brown
Let me see.
rice,
I must have been
pilaf,
Do
reading
not
it.
have much
Japanese
for-
Well, I
blend
just have two. You
vegetables,
can have.
diced carrots,
I'm trying to
Vienna
see if
bread
I
with
have-
margarine,
Let's see
fortune
what I
cookie,
can
I have one in my
fresh fruit,
business.
and 1% milk.
Oh.
And we thank you, Jim Wilson, for today's senior home delivery meal menu. You can hear this menu each and every weekday at about
You
this
know,
time.
I could,
Now, stay tuned and you can hear.
I have, you know what, if you want to be asking, go ahead.
Are we back?
Nebraska Shakespeare returns for its
Because
12th
I have-
annual
I have
on-tour
US
production,
Coastal
Romeo
Growth
and Juliet.
Continues.
The
For-
tour
for,
kicks off with
I
a
mean,
free
that could be-
abridged
money.
version of Romeo
Well,
and
I
Juliet
mean, that could be
performed
part of
at
a
Creighton
leading
University,
Yeah.
Friday, September 22nd
Okay.
at
Another one
7:30
is
p.m.
home builders concerned
The
about
fully
sales.
staged performance will be held at Creighton
Gee, I
University's
should've-
lead,
here's a good one for-
Education Center for the Arts,
business, this costume
followed by a
chicken flight
discussion
over.
with the artistic
Yeah.
director and actors,
But
before
I have got
touring more than
hardly-
30
I don't
middle
have very much
schools,
for-
high schools, and
how much time do you
communities
need for
throughout
editorial?
Nebraska and
Ah,
Iowa. Admission
got
is
one-
free.
I don't
An
think I have
audio
any-
description will
Oh, I
be
got it.
provided by Outlook
I
Nebraska
read
with the audio description
Journal
pre-show
Stars.
starting at 7:15 p.m.
Because this one is.
Does
Please
Rural Herald
contact
have one?
Nebraska Shakespeare at
Ah.
402-280-2333 to reserve front row seats.
Well,
Please join us
it's probably
Friday,
worth
September
reading. It's
22nd
about,
for this free Nebraska Shakespeare Romeo,
Complete,
and
receive
Juliet
complaints,
experience.
conduct investigations,
you,
and provide
Dr.
the public
Judy,
with
very
information
much
how
for
the state
that
handles
announcement.
cases
Yeah,
involving
And turning,
vulnerable
of course,
children. I
to the
probably
Radio
that'd be
Talking
good
Book
too.
Network in
The public
Nebraska.
pulse
We've
letters
been
are
proudly
kind of just,
serving our blind and visually
I know.
impaired listeners
I
now
don't think I'm going to read
for
any of them. They're just
43 years.
not even very
The Radio
interesting.
Talking Book Network
I don't
is
care
brought
what
to
side
you
you're
with the
on. They're just
cooperation
not.
of KIOS FM in Omaha and statewide.
Actually,
through the
we,
Are you going to do
facilities
Ask
of
Amy then?
NBT
Yeah, I'll do
Radio
Ask
and
Amy.
Television. It is time now to continue
you can
with
start
our
with your
second
editorial
half of
first.
today's reading
Yeah, okay.
from the
Yeah, we got to go to
Omaha
editorials
World
first.
and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Let's welcome back once again Don Van and Beverly Leidig.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, listeners, for sticking with us. It is time for editorials, which at least here for the Journal-Star, there's a few letters in here. There's actually three. One's a very mini letter, but it's kind of cute, actually. So I'll read them, and well, you can let us know or if you feel they were worth it or not. This first one is from Molly Mayhew of Lincoln. And Molly writes, like many Lincolnites, the idea of Betsy DeVos being in the vicinity made my blood boil. What made it boil a bit more was Steve Joel's quotes in Wednesday's Lincoln Journal-Star. That's from DeVos Applauds Innovation, September 13th. Joel, I guess is his name, Joel, the Lincoln Public Schools superintendent, spoke of what's right about Nebraska public schools and how Zoo School is one of the district's showcase programs. I'm curious, does Mr. Joel know why students go to Zoo School? While the program is unbeatable in terms of science-related education, I always found there are two major reasons students attend Zoo School. One, their home high schools are failing at teaching because the one-size-fits-all method falls short. The other, constant bullying, and always being the outsider has taken a mental toll. As a Zoo School alumna, I can say I fell into both of these categories. Our Nebraska public schools have some serious problems both in terms of education and bullying management. These issues never cease to exist, and what's more, rarely is a solution put into place to rectify these problems. But hey, LPS has one showcase program ready to put on display at a moment's notice. However, that one jewel in the crown does make for a very illustrious crown, now does it? There are thousands of teachers, students, and parents at your disposal, Mr. Joel. Do you ever listen to their concerns? How about education? How about welfare? If you don't, I guess that's okay. After all, past superintendents never listened either. And this next one, it's entitled Memorial Stadium Needs a New Tenant. It's from Gary Ashmore of Lincoln. And Gary says, Plan B, put a roof over Memorial Stadium and give it to the women's volleyball team. A disgruntled football fan. Okay, the last letter, the third letter, is from Peter S. Levitoff of Lincoln. As a Nebraskan for more than 45 years, I have seen how various groups of immigrants have contributed to our state's economy, married and raised families, and become upstanding members of our communities. The estimated 3,000 dreamers in Nebraska brought here as children with their parents have graduated from our high schools and many from our colleges and universities, found employment, paid taxes, and for all intents and purposes, become full-fledged Nebraskans. It is critical that we retain them and not allow them to be removed from our country, the only country they really have ever known. I appeal to our 2 U.S. senators and 3 representatives in the House to make it possible for them to fully live the American dream, prosper, and contribute to our society. And that letter is from Peter S. Levitoff from Lincoln. Yep.
Thank you, Don. Here's a few letters from the Public Pulse in the Omaha World Herald. I am sure, well, let me say this first one is from Les Banning of Omaha. I am sure I am not the only one who is fed up with listening to folks making a big deal out of losing those wonderful buildings in Jobbers Canyon. Except for a few buildings west of 10th Street, most were plain stone, box-like buildings that were used as warehouses. Parking. Are you kidding? There were no parking lots, so a handful of early workers could park close by. Latecomers and clients had to enjoy their walk. What we have now is a beautiful lake, garden areas, and good-looking buildings. Not only are there numerous events there every summer, but visitors who go to the College World Series and other events are treated to open-air appreciation of the area. So quit crying over spilled milk every chance you get and enjoy the area like the rest of us. Here's a letter from Clara Sue Arnsdorf of Bellevue. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, should be familiar to every American. These words from the preamble to the Constitution begins one of the most remarkable documents in our history, and indeed in the history of the world. It has been designated Constitution Week. It is a time during which our nation is invited to investigate the United States Constitution, to remember the freedoms it gives our citizens, and to examine the duties it requires of them. The Omaha chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution invites the public to join with it in celebrating freedom by learning more about the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution of the United States was signed by our forefathers on September 17, 1787. In this document, they struggled to balance a limited government with the rights, privileges, and responsibilities of American citizenship. It has endured with limited changes for 230 years. This endurance is, in itself, a remarkable accomplishment which deserves our appreciation. For this special week, put partisan politics aside and show your pride in our Constitution. Read it, study it, and know your rights under it. Here's a letter from Mike Scow of Omaha. Medicare for all is a valid option for Americans. I'm receiving Medicare. It works fine. It is accepted by a majority of all medical facilities and doctors nationwide. We can purchase a supplemental plan that keeps the greedy insurance companies in the game, and who knows, maybe they will lower their rates considering the volume of potential new participants. Medicare for all would make America greater. From David Jonas of Blair, as I watched the news and saw the lowlights of the Emmy Awards, one point was very apparent. All the Trump haters, starting with Stephen Colbert and the rest of the feckless crew, are the ones who are unstable. These clowns need to wake up and get a life. Here's a letter from Joshua Weir of Omaha. Saturday was a day I'll never forget. My 3-year-old son got to experience his first game at Memorial Stadium and was the 5th generation to sit in the family seats. He was mesmerized by the crowd, startled by the fireworks, and warmly received by high-fiving neighboring fans. He even added his little voice to the 90,000-strong Go Big Red chant. Faced with the prospect of a fading 3-year-old in a big crowd, I started the long walk to the fields by Haymarket Park with him on my shoulders. He slept the whole way home. Safe to say, the big red bug has passed along to the next generation. Will keep on coming in all kinds of weather and won't leave early again. Here's a letter from Peter Latte of Omaha. The Equifax hack is worse than the massive 2015 hack of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management and dwarfs the 2013 Target hack. The incredibly arrogant response of the Equifax CEO, the delay in disclosure of the hack, the magnitude of the hack, and the bumbling congressional response is a huge story. It raises big questions. Is it even safe to communicate with Equifax on its own website? Did Equifax senior managers sell their personal stock holdings before disclosure of the hack? Here's a letter from Sarah Efkin Purcell, Syracuse, who's president of the University of Nebraska Lincoln Faculty Senate. The Faculty Senate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln stands shoulder to shoulder with the President of the University of Nebraska, Hank Bounds, and the University of Nebraska Chancellor Ronnie Green in support of our students enrolled in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. We urge our Nebraskan congressional delegation to work together with their colleagues in the U.S. Congress to find a permanent solution for those enrolled in the DACA program, whereby all DACA students can pursue their own America dream. As faculty of UNL, we are committed to providing quality education to all students. This commitment to excellence to each UNL student will not waver. And that's the letters in the Public Pulse today.
Thanks, Bev. Well, let's find out what the editorial writers for the Journal Star, what's on their mind today. Well, the deaths of 2 teens at a West Lincoln Railroad crossing last month brought into focus the network of such intersections of rail and pavement across the city. Before the fatal collision along West South Street, though, the Railroad Transportation Safety District had begun to explore modification to Lincoln's rail system, ranging from the installation of a quiet zone to increase safety, that's $5 million, to the long-term removal and rerouting of the nearly 150-year-old line, $25 to $35 million, on which Lincoln's latest fatal train car crash occurred. This work won't be done overnight, nor should it be. But by all means, government and railroad officials must continue to look at the potential of improvements along the line or eventual replacement and abandonment of tracks in that area, particularly as Lincoln's population boom shows no signs of stopping. Roger Feigard, director of the City-County Railroad Transportation Safety District, told the Journal Star that BNSF Railway is willing to consider potential relocation. He added that the idea will gain additional steam as there's more vehicle traffic. 5 fatalities have occurred on what's known as the Amtrak line, the route through West Lincoln where the teens were killed within the past decade, according to the Federal Railroad Administration. The railroad crosses 7 streets, including busy stretches of West A and West South Streets, and a recreational trail, all of which have seen increased traffic in recent years. West Lincoln, like the city as a whole, will continue to grow, meaning the RTSD, along with elected and railroad leaders, will soon have to make a decision on the line that still serves 22 trains per day. Lincoln has made significant progress over the past 50 years by reducing the number of frequency of at-grade crossings, those where roads meet railroads. This in turn helped dramatically cut the number of tragedies caused by car train or pedestrian train collisions, reducing deaths nearly tenfold and injuries by more than 60% since 1968. Unfortunately, that number will almost certainly never reach 0, despite safety improvements such as concrete medians at crossings. Too many drivers, cyclists, and walkers are always willing to needlessly gamble by dodging barriers installed for their safety. The possible prize of gaining a minute or 2 exceeds the potential loss, the ultimate cost, their lives. Lincoln's railroad heritage and the continued importance of rail transit throughout the state mean that travelers will always encounter crossings. The best outcome is for increasing safety and decreasing the number of crossings, both matters deserving of further study and appropriate action.
Here's an editorial from the staff of the Omaha World-Herald. Nebraska lawmakers created the position of Inspector General for Child Welfare in 2012 to receive complaints, conduct investigations, and provide the public with information about problems and successes in how the state handles cases involving vulnerable children. The latest report from Julie Rogers, the Inspector General, has triggered sniping between herself and the Nebraska court system. Rogers bluntly criticizes how the State Office of Probation Administration handles juvenile cases. Probation responds that Rogers presents a one-sided picture that ignores the agency's positive actions. Push the squabbling aside, though, and the central question remains: exactly how well or poorly is probation handling its juvenile cases, which were fully shifted to the agency in 2014 as part of a reform effort? The contradictory claims by Rogers and probation not only make for confusion, their conflict also gets in the way of understanding a major public concern: the care of vulnerable children. In her report, Rogers says she investigated the deaths of 2 youth supervised by or receiving services from probation and made 13 recommendations to the court system. Probation did not accept any of the recommendations, she writes in her new report, and has provided no information to date to suggest that the agency has taken meaningful steps to rectify the issues identified in the investigations. The report says her office remains concerned that probation lacks policies and protocols to successfully serve youth with mental health needs, developmental disabilities, and child welfare involvement. In a letter, probation officials responded that Rogers' report grossly omitted many facts as to probation's collaborative efforts, and that probation has worked tirelessly to assess gaps and build upon successes. Given the nature of the incidents investigated by Rogers, the letter said, probation took the report's findings and recommendations very seriously. The recommendations have been thoroughly reviewed and are included as considerations within probation's ongoing evaluation and implementation of evidence-based practices and policies. Probation's response also included a rash and irresponsible assertion that, quote, no credibility should be given to the OIG, Office of Inspector General, report whatsoever. Speaker Jim Scheer and the chairs of the legislature's Executive Board and Judiciary Committee understandably expressed concern about the tone of that claim, viewing it as moving away from the constructive public statements by Rogers and probation only last year, when a compromise was worked out to allow Rogers access to case information. Just as Rogers has an obligation to report in an objective and professional manner, giving proper credit to agencies when due, so the court system should avoid coming across as hysterical whenever its actions receive criticism or disagreement. Right now, the public isn't being given adequate information. Probation needs to make public a full description of its efforts so Nebraskans can make a well-informed judgment on how well the state's vulnerable youths are being served.
Well, it's 19 minutes after the top of the hour, which is our second hour. And it's time to move on to today's living and entertainment sections of the newspapers. And for the Lincoln Journal-Star, that means the advice/information column, Dear Doctor, and the authors are Elizabeth Coe and Eve Glazer. Well, Dear Doctor, my best friend who never smoked died of lung cancer last spring. My father, who has been a smoker since high school, is fine. What puts you at greater risk of getting cancer? Your genes, your habits, the environment, or is it just random chance? Well, dear reader, your question is familiar ground for anyone whose life has been touched by cancer. It's not so much a wish to assign blame as it is our minds seeking a toehold of logic in the face of catastrophic news. If we knew how or why something happened, then life events can be less arbitrary and thus more manageable. When it comes to lung cancer, decades of research have substantiated the correlation between the use of tobacco products and lung disease. No, not everyone who smokes goes on to develop lung cancer, but those who smoke, like your father, do increase their risk. However, two recent studies into your question have added some nuance and more than a little controversy to the discussion. Please join and excuse us as we walk out a bit. Last winter, the authors of a paper published in the journal Science returned with a more targeted take. The original paper posed the same questions you're asking. The conclusions led many readers to understand that the authors were saying plain old bad luck is responsible for a majority of cancers. Needless to say, the pushback was fierce. The newest paper, published by the same authors last March, still comes down on the side of random chance. However, with a larger sample size and expanded explanations and arguments, it also backs many of the ideas behind disease prevention. The authors wanted an answer to why cancer arises from some tissues in our bodies 1,000,000 times more frequently than it does in others. They focused on the fact that in specific tissues that give rise to 31 types of cancer, stem cells divided far more often. Using a mathematical model, they concluded that amid the flurry of DNA replication, errors were occurring. The new study arrives at the same conclusion. A majority, that's 66%, of cancerous mutations result from random choice. However, this time the authors looped in how this relates to environmental factors and genetic predispositions. Certain behaviors like smoking, as well as environmental factors and genetics, do cause an increase in mutations. But just where in any individual's DNA these mutations will occur is unpredictable. In your late friend's case, mutations occurred in tissues that gave rise to lung cancer. Your dad's smoking may well have caused mutations as well, but thus far, they have not been located in susceptible tissues. This isn't a blank check to go off the rails. The study concluded that at least 3 separate gene mutations are needed to move a tissue from health to disease. Maybe 1 or 2 mutations will happen due to random chance. Why add to the odds of another mutation by smoking, eating poorly, or not getting enough exercise? Bottom line, when you take part in high-risk behaviors, you're loading the genetic dice. Now, you can send your questions to Ask the Doctors at mednet.ucla.edu.
And if they can't answer them, maybe Amy can, because I've got a lot of people asking her questions here today. We'll start with this one. Dear Amy, I recently learned that my younger sister is dating a married man. They've been dating for many months. Of course, he claims he was never in love with his wife, etc. They have children. She portrays him as the victim, trapped in an unhappy marriage. They seem to be dating openly. Her friends have met him and their co-workers know about the relationship. My sister claims that he recently told his wife he wants a divorce. I have a very hard time believing or respecting anyone that would disrespect their marriage so outwardly. My sister has stood by me through all of my many past relationships and trials, and now she wants me to not judge her and to respect her decision to move forward and continue in this relationship. A hard time knowing there are nameless, faithless people on the other side of this equation. I'm a mother of young children and can't help but imagine what it would be like for them if their father cheated on them. I've also witnessed the divorces of friends and family, and I know how messy things can get. I just don't think she's thinking this through. What advice do you have for a worried sister? Signed, Sleepless Sister. Dear Sleepless, You will lose less sleep if you embrace the fact that your sister's relationship really has nothing to do with you. This might be what she is trying to get at when she asks you not to judge her. You see this relationship as flawed and unethical. I do too. Your sister is a party to the pain caused by infidelity and the possible breakup of a marriage. If your sister asks for your endorsement, you need only state your own truth. I want you to be happy, but your happiness seems to be contingent on other people getting hurt. I believe that this is unethical. You don't have intimate knowledge about this man's marriage. She doesn't either. Be extremely circumspect. Don't speculate about the future. The future is her problem. If this couple ends up together long term, you may have to face him as a family member. You don't need to agree with or endorse this relationship, but you may have to accept it. Here's another letter to Amy. Dear Amy, I am a 61-year-old happily married woman with 2 grown sons. Several years ago, I took an early retirement in order to be available to my recently widowed mother. I have one brother who is also married with his own family. He sees my mother every other Sunday for breakfast. He presents as a narcissist. He is the best son, his family is the best, his wife is great, etc. Because of his general attitude and blatant disrespect for me and my family, I have chosen to disengage from him and not have any contact. How do I tell my mother? Signed, Hadit. Dear Hadit, the basic hallmarks of narcissism are grandiosity, a lack of empathy for other people, and a need for admiration. Your brother might be a narcissist, or he might be a guy who simply loves his own life. You have the right to disengage from your brother, and you don't even need to justify it, either to him, your mother, or anyone else. If your mother asks you for an explanation about your relationship with your brother, you can tell her, he and I don't really see eye to eye. He doesn't seem very interested in me or my life, but if he is good to you, then I'm happy about that. I hope you can find a way to establish a separate peace, understanding that despite his fine opinion of himself, your brother is flawed. You don't need to be friends, but you are siblings. As your mother ages, you will be occasionally forced to deal with one another. It would be easiest for you if you could find a detached and cordial way to communicate with him without really caring too much what he thinks of himself or you. And finally, here's the last letter from someone who signs themselves laughing. Dear Amy, I laughed at your politically correct answer to New Girl with a Moral Dilemma, who reported that her coworkers are racist. She didn't offer one example of their alleged racism, and yet you took her side. You should have suggested that she befriend these coworkers and attempt to understand them. They're laughing. Well, maybe these coworkers should befriend New Girl instead of shunning her over her own progressive views. Got anything else?
Always good advice, huh? I do have one that I'm going to borrow from the business section. It's concerning today's living, and it's about home building. Well, U.S. home builders are feeling less optimistic about their sales prospects, reflecting concerns that rebuilding efforts following Hurricanes Harvey and Irma will drive up costs for construction labor and materials. Even so, builders' overall view of the new home market remains positive. The National Association of Home Builders / Wells Fargo Builder Sentiment Index released Monday slipped to 64 this month. That's down 3 points from a downwardly revised reading of 67 in August. Readings above 50 indicate more builders view sales conditions as good rather than poor. The index has been above 60 since September last year. The latest index fell short of analyst predictions, which called for a reading of 67, according to FactSet. Readings gauging builders' view of sales now and over the next 6 months declined from last month. A measure of traffic by prospective buyers also fell. Sales of new U.S. homes are running ahead of last year's pace, reflecting strong demand for homes as the economy has continued to create jobs. Still, sales posted their biggest one-month drop in nearly a year in July, sliding 9.4% to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 571,000. August new home sales figures are due out next week. Sales stumbled this summer as a supply crunch elevated average home prices nationwide. In response, builders are ramping up their supply of new homes, providing a crucial outlet. But the number of newly built properties available is still below historical levels. While home construction is up about 2.3% so far this year, builders say they are hamstrung by shortages of skilled workers and land parcels ready for new construction. That dearth of skilled construction labor is expected to get worse in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, which plowed through Texas and Louisiana late last month, and Hurricane Irma, which slammed into Florida earlier this month. Rebuilding in the aftermath of the two deadly and devastating storms is expected to drive construction costs higher and cause delays. More and more of our daily living is going to be impacted by those hurricanes.
Well, here's something that we've been doing for years and years impacting our daily living, and everybody's probably heard every one of these stories. A friend is trying to lose weight and wants to check that her strategies were sound. She counts every calorie, avoids nuts and their high fat content, and snacks on sugary but fat-free foods. Was she on track? If that conversation took place in 1993, she'd get kudos for her nutrition knowledge. But those bits of wisdom are badly outdated. Here's how nutrition information has changed over the years and why it's important to keep up. Number one, all fat is bad. 25 years ago, we all believed that fat makes you fat. So butter, cream cheese, and peanut butter were off limits. Fat-free foods were deemed better for health. So nuts, seeds, and avocado were frowned upon. A low-fat, high-carb diet was the recommended approach for weight control and cardiovascular health. Check your menu. If you are still eating pasta without olive oil or bread without peanut butter, you're doing yourself a disservice. Fat should not be feared. Certain fats, especially from nuts, seeds, olive oil, fish, and avocado, are beneficial for heart health and weight control and can help reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. They should be enjoyed in your daily diet. Number two, fructose okay for diabetics. My nutrition textbook from 1995 says that fructose does not cause problems of high blood sugar for people with diabetes. Fructose naturally occurs in fruit and it's fine in small doses. But in the 1990s, fructose was considered healthier than white sugar and heavily used as a sweetener for processed foods. It turns out that excessive consumption of fructose, mostly as high fructose corn syrup, has been linked to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, so it's not good for diabetics after all. Too much fructose also is associated with metabolic syndrome, obesity, and cardiovascular disease. Fructose from fruit is fine, but high consumption of fructose in the form of sweeteners is not recommended, whether you have diabetes or not. 3, all calories are equal. I distinctly remember my nutrition professor saying, it doesn't matter if you eat 300 calories from apples or from chocolate, a calorie is a calorie. In the mid-90s, calories were all treated the same, no matter the source. Tunnel vision. We now recognize that calories from soda, candy, and other treats deliver sugar, but offer no vitamins, minerals, fiber, or protein. That's different from calories from vegetables, legumes, or fish, which provide nutrients in every bite. Sugar just causes cavities. My dorm room was stocked with fat-free and guilt-free pleasures. These fat-free foods are loaded with sugar, but that didn't seem to be a problem because I was taught that sugar causes dental cavities, but is otherwise benign. I brush twice daily, so no harm done, right? Fast forward to 2017, and a new story emerges. Recent studies link excessive sugar consumption, especially from sweetened beverages, to an increased risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and heart disease. Sugar is not as blameless as we once thought and should be limited. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar per day for women and 9 teaspoons for men. Finally, calories in, calories out. Weight loss was explained very simply in nutrition school. You'll lose weight by cutting calories from food and increasing calories burned through exercise. That's it, just eat less and move more. Obesity was blamed on laziness and overconsumption. Now we know that obesity is more complex than that. It involves genetics, physiology, activity level, environment, diet, and socioeconomic status. Plus, researchers are heavily studying how obesity relates to hormones such as leptin, which are not even mentioned in the 1990s textbooks. In 2017, we aim to treat obesity as a disease and not lay blame on the people who have it. We still don't have a lot of answers about nutrition, which is considered a relatively new science. The research evolves as humans evolve, and today's theory may not carry weight tomorrow. It will be interesting to read this in 25 years.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Well, it's 37 minutes after the hour.
Now, Don, I do have one more
Oh,
story.
that'd be great.
if you'd
I don't
like
have
to
any.
hear it,
I have
because
nothing but some business.
I know you've got business stories, but I think my readers might enjoy this
You
one.
bet.
Veterinarian Gary Ryder says it's one of the most common phone calls he receives at his emergency room practice. What do you do when your pet gets sprayed by a skunk? Before offering advice, Ryder first wants to dispel the myth that cans of tomato juice will remove the awful smell. They don't work very well, Ryder said. He recommends mixing the following solution and rubbing it into your pet's fur as soon as possible. 1 quart hydrogen peroxide, 1/4 cup baking soda, and 1 tablespoon dish soap. He recommends using Dawn. He warns that this can be messy, so wear clothes that you don't mind staining and protective gloves. Try to let the mixture stay on your dog for about 10 to 15 minutes before rinsing it off. Although your pet is likely to be distressed during the process, the longer it is on, the more it will help break down the components of skunk gland secretions. The dish soap is especially important as it will break down the skunk's oil-based spray. If an animal has been sprayed in the face, it will often rub its eyes against the ground. Ryder recommends rinsing the eyes with a saline solution. Make sure to wash your pet's mouth with cool water too. When do you need to see an expert? If you notice severe lethargy, pale gums, or labored breathing, then get to a vet right away, Ryder said. And I'm going to give you that recipe one more time because from personal experience, I have used this and it does work. It's 1 quart hydrogen peroxide, 1/4 cup baking soda, and 1 tablespoon dish soap. And good luck with that, because until the weather turns cold and those skunks go into hibernation, they're out there and they're waiting for our dogs.
Like coyotes are now too.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
right. We've got a lot of things we have to take care of, but just stock up on those items and you'll probably be okay.
I always heard tomato juice worked.
I know, and now the doctor says don't use that. So,
well, it's 40 minutes after the hour, and it is time for business. From the Journal Star, this article is entitled U.S. Coastal Growth Continues. Rising sea levels and fierce storms have failed to stop relentless population growth along U.S. coasts in recent years, a new Associated Press analysis shows. The latest punishing hurricanes scored bullseyes on 2 of the country's fastest growing regions, coastal Texas around Houston and resort areas of southwest Florida. Nothing seems to curb America's appetite for life near the sea, especially in the warmer climates of the South. Coastal development destroys natural barriers such as islands and wetlands, promotes erosion and flooding, and positions more buildings and people in the path of future destruction, according to researchers and policy advisors who study hurricanes. History gives us a lesson, but we don't always learn from it, said Graham Tobin, a disaster researcher at the University of South Florida in Tampa. That city took a glancing hit from Hurricane Irma, one of the most intense U.S. hurricanes in years, but suffered less flooding and damage than in some other parts of the state. In 2005, coastal communities took heed of more than 1,800 deaths and $108 billion in damages from Hurricane Katrina, one of the worst disasters in U.S. history. Images of New Orleans underwater elicited solemn resolutions that such a thing should never happen again, until Superstorm Sandy inundated Lower Manhattan in 2012. Last year, Hurricane Matthew spread more deaths, flooding, and blackouts across Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas. From 2010 to 2016, major hurricanes and tropical storms were blamed for more than 280 deaths and 100 billion in damages, according to data from the Federal National Centers for Environmental Information. Harvey, another historically big hurricane, flooded sections of Houston in recent weeks. 4 counties around Houston, where growth has been buoyed by the oil business, took the full force of the storm. The population of those counties expanded by 12% from 2010 to 2016 to a total of 5.3 million people, the AP analysis shows. During the same years, 2 of Florida's fastest growing coastline counties, retirement-friendly Lee and Manatee, both south of Tampa, welcomed 16% more people. That area took a second direct hit from Irma after it made first landfall in the Florida Keys, where damage was far more devastating. Overall, growth of 10% in Texas Gulf counties and 9% along Florida's coasts during the same period were surpassed only by South Carolina. Its seaside population, led by the Myrtle Beach area of Horry County, ballooned by more than 13%. Nationally, coastline counties grew an average of 5.6% since 2010, while inland communities gained just 4%. This recent trend tracks with decades of development along U.S. coasts. Between 1960 and 2008, the national coastline population rose by 84%, compared with 64% inland, according to the Census Bureau.
The Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality has approved construction of Costco's chicken processing complex in Fremont and said it will issue a permit allowing construction to proceed on the $280 million project. More than a dozen people told the Department of Environmental Quality at an August hearing that they were concerned that the operation could hurt air quality in their community. The department reviewed and responded to those comments in a document signed September 14th by Kevin Stoner, administrator of the Air Quality Division. The state required the permit because the planned facility, including a plant, feed mill, and hatchery, will surpass certain emission thresholds, according to the document. It studied the pollutants the operation will emit and determined that the project will not have what's considered a significant impact on air quality beyond the property. The project is fully operational, the department said in the document. The greater Omaha area still will meet national ambient air quality standards for 6 common air pollutants. The plant is expected to begin operating in the spring of 2019. It will employ about 800 people and will slaughter and process more than 2 million chickens a week. Some structural work at the site began in August without a formal permit under a variance. Now expect to see work continue in earnest at the site south of downtown Fremont. The project is on schedule, and the first building to go vertical will be the feed mill, said Walt Schaefer, project manager for plant operator Lincoln Premium Poultry. In addition to overseeing construction, project leaders are hiring plant managers, making decisions about plant operations, and assisting area farmers in the process of building chicken barns.
Well, time for sports. The injury update on Nebraska's senior middle blocker, Brianna Holman, could have been worse. Holman had to leave the match last weekend against UNO after she fell to the floor with an ankle injury, but Nebraska coach John Cook said on Monday that Holman did not break her ankle. Cook called the injury a sprain. He said it will take a few days of treatment to sort out the extent of the injury. It's just whether she's out a week, 2 weeks, that's what it's going to be, Cook said. Holman has started all 10 matches this season and leads the Huskers with 40 blocks. Nebraska begins Big Ten Conference play this week with a tough road match against second-ranked Penn State on Friday. If Holman is unable to play, freshman Chesney McClellan will take her spot in the lineup. McClellan came in for Holman and finished the third set during a sweep of Omaha. If McClellan hadn't played yet and the season was more than half complete, Cook said Nebraska would have considered her for a redshirt season. But the season is only 4 weeks in, and Cook didn't hesitate to put her in the match. The 6'4" middle blocker from Maryville, Tennessee, has good vision, Cook said, and doesn't get blocked a lot when hitting. I think Chesney will do fine, Cook said. She's been training great. She's a pretty high-skilled player. She's played in a really good club team. She was very well coached before she even got here, so it's not like we're starting from zero with her. Cook said he hadn't considered playing McClellan until he was forced to, in part because he thought setter Kelly Hunter needed to gain experience setting middle blockers Lauren Stivrins and Holman. Hunter missed a significant amount of practice during the preseason and the first 2 matches of the season due to an injury. We're just trying to get Bree and Lauren going, Cook said. Again, Kelly has really, only up until last weekend, been in 4 practices where she was all out blocking and doing everything. So we're just trying to get a rhythm going that we should have been doing on August 8th. Kelly didn't block very well last weekend, and part of that is she's blocked 4 days since April. We're a little bit behind, and we're trying to catch up. We were forcing the ball to Bree and Lauren, trying to get our middle going.
Okay, well, we knew we'd have to talk about this sooner or later, so we got a story here from the Huskers. The main killer of Nebraska's already lackluster 2017 offense is third down. They go all right, then Nebraska hits a third down and the system's shut off, offensive coordinator Danny Langsdorf said on Monday. 3rd and 2, 3rd and 10, it doesn't really matter. Nebraska has not been consistent moving the chains when it needs to. The Huskers are 15 for 47 on third down this season. That's 13th in the Big Ten and 112th in college football overall. Early on Saturday's 21-17 loss to Northern Illinois, Nebraska faced 3rd and 2 on consecutive drives. Both times, the Huskers failed to convert, first on a run and then on a pass. 3rd and 2, you think, this is great, Langsdorf said, and when you can't even get those, that's killer. Nebraska needed an average of 6 yards on third down against Northern Illinois, which is actually not bad in Langsdorf's book. 3rd and 6 fall under 3rd and manageable, he said. But for whatever reason, be it pass or run, Nebraska's not been able to find third down plays that work through 3 games. In the run game, NU averages 1.38 yards per carry on third down. Langsdorff's called up 7 run plays this season on 3rd and 3 or less and converted on 6 of those tries. But on 3rd and anything beyond 3 yards, the Huskers average negative yards per play when they run the ball. That includes the 6 times Tanner Lee's been sacked. When Nebraska faces 3rd and 4 or longer, it usually falls on Lee, the offensive line, and the receivers to convert in the pass game. But 3rd down is Nebraska's least efficient down through the air. Langsdorff has called 34 pass plays on the season's 47 3rd downs. Lee's completed just 14 of those throws for a 41.2 completion percentage, his worst on any down. He's thrown 2 touchdowns on 3rd down and 3 of his 7 interceptions. On 3rd and 7 or further, Lee is 7 for 19. Of those 7 completions, just 3 produced first downs. We have too many 3 and outs, and it's doing the work on 1st and 2nd down to get to good 3rd down, but then we've got to convert it too at the same time, Langsdorff said. Nebraska's not been able to catch teams off guard either. On 3rd and short, you're obviously more likely to run, Langsdorff said. Same with 3rd and long and passing. But the offensive coordinator insists he doesn't think the failure on 3rd down has anything to do with being predictable. It's not other teams sniffing out plays or Nebraska showing its hand. It's the Huskers shooting themselves in the foot, not getting a good push on 3rd and 2 to run over the marker or completing a throw on 3rd and 9. I think the issues are a mixture of stuff, Langsdorff said. A little bit of throw and catch. It's probably some block stuff up front. It's been a lot of different problems, Langsdorff said, kind of like the way we've played.
Well, let's hear what Mike Riley has to say. Not a good week, I'm sure. But, well, the weather fit the mood. On a cloudy, cool day at Memorial Stadium, Nebraska football coach Mike Riley and a small group of players faced the bright glare of the cameras and spoke about how the Huskers move on from Saturday's 21-17 loss to Northern Illinois. The stunning defeat ended a strange week for the football program, one that began with the revelation of Riley's contract being extended, continued with the news of Nebraska ending and then not ending Black Friday games, and ended with the program's first ever loss to a Mid-American Conference program. I think that you wouldn't be human if doubt didn't creep in after something like that. The coaches in the room have to help these guys, Riley said Monday. Big things, even without a game like that, is always, through the course of the week, building confidence on how it's going to look on game day. A process that will start today with practice that will continue to rise as we go to practice throughout the week. Practice this week figures to focus as much on building confidence as it will on preparing for Rutgers. Like Nebraska, a 1-win, 2-loss team, but one with the confidence of beating a team it should have beaten and doing it handily. The Scarlet Knights' 65-0 demolition of Morgan State was the team's first win in 364 days. So the challenge becomes balancing the bad taste of Saturday's loss with preparation for a confident opponent. As a competitor, it stays with you for a time because you think about it as an individual on the team. What could you have done to prevent the loss? And I hope that's what all of our teammates think. Sophomore linebacker Mohammed Berry said, what, as an individual, could you have done to prevent the loss? So we're not blaming anyone individually for that loss. It's a collective team effort. And then you just think, if I did something better, then maybe we couldn't have lost. So it sticks with you for a long time. But after 24 hours, now we're on to Rutgers. One thing the Huskers haven't done, players said, is turn on each other. Plenty of season remains and plenty of blame to go around. Pointing the finger won't accomplish as much as getting back to work. I feel like people care. And at the end of the day, we didn't play the blame game. When we got in the locker room, I felt like people knew it was a collective Senior kicker Drew Brown said, "Our coaches didn't play the blame game, and we stuck together as a team. There wasn't any bickering. There wasn't people yelling at each other and all that. Several people handled it a different way, but I feel like we stayed as a team, and that's a great thing because, again, we want to zero in on the Big Ten play, and the season is right in front of us. So that's the biggest thing."
Okay, let's talk about baseball. New York, Giancarlo Stanton smacks, Aaron Judge's jolts, and all those dizzying long balls helped Major League Baseball move another poke closer to the inevitable. Nearly 2 decades after the height of the steroids era, the sport is on track to break its season record for home runs on Tuesday. And not just top the old mark, but smash it like one of those upper deck shots that have become commonplace in the summer of the slugger. There were 5,663 home runs hit through Sunday, 30 shy of the record set in 2000. Juiced balls, watered down pitching, Stanton's renaissance, sensational starts by Judge and Cody Bellinger. I don't think we are ever going to have a single explanation for exactly why we've seen so many, Manfred said, but players are bigger and stronger. They're playing a little differently in terms of the way they swing. Pitchers throw harder. The one thing I remain comfortable with is nothing about the baseball, according to our testing, is materially different. There were 5,610 homers last year, an average of 2.31 per game, and this year's average of 2.53 projects to 6,143. That would be up 47% from 4,186 in 2014. In just 3 years, home runs will have been increased by 1,957, an extra 149 miles of long balls at this year's average home run length of 400 feet. The game has changed, New York Yankees manager Joe Girardi said. From where I started, there's a lot less stolen bases, there's a lot less bunting, there's a lot less hitting and running. You don't give outs away, and you let guys swing the bat. Already 107 players have hit 20 homers this year, just 3 shy of the record set last season, and up from 64 in 2015, according to the Elias Sports Bureau.
Well, Auburn coach Gus Malzahn has dismissed former starting quarterback Shaun White following a suspension and a subsequent arrest. The 15th ranked Tigers backup quarterback was arrested early Sunday morning on a charge of public intoxication. White had been suspended for the first 2 games for undisclosed reasons. Malzahn says White has made poor decisions that are not in the best interest of our program, and more importantly, himself. Auburn police records show White was arrested at 2:45 Sunday morning. He started 16 games the past 2 seasons, but lost the preseason competition for the job to transfer Jarrett Stidham. And in some local volleyball news, Nebraska Kearney moved ahead 1 spot to number 5 in the newest AVCA NCAA Division II poll. The Lopers 11-1 went 3 wins, no losses last week, and have won 8 straight. Wayne State went 1-1 last week and dropped 1 spot to number 18. And one other note, Beatrice standout basketball player Michaela Jones has committed to Northern Colorado. The Class B All-Stater visited the Greeley, Colorado campus over the weekend and told the UNC coaches of her decision Saturday. Well, it's 12 o'clock, and that means our time is up. So for Don Van
And Beverly Leidick,
so long, everyone. Have a great week.
And thank you both very, very much. Thank you, Don Van Mollahan, and thank you, Beverly Leidick, for coming in today and giving up your time so that we could be kept
Very
informed
good.
from your reading of the Omaha
Yeah,
World
I
Herald
pick
and
up
the
that
Lincoln
World
Journal
Herald and
Star.
take it
And
at home.
please
It's
have a
like
wonderful
a
week
pamphlet.
from all of us here at the Radio Talking Book Network. You are tuned to the Radio
Although
Talking
I
Book
think
Network in
it's better
Nebraska.
than it
We've
used
been
to be.
proudly
Yeah.
serving our blind and visually impaired listeners now for 43
Because they
years.
do
The Radio
longer
Talking Book Network is brought
articles
to
on
you with the
local things
cooperation
now.
Yeah.
of
They used to just
KIOSFM
take
in
the
Omaha
APD.
and statewide
Yeah.
through the facilities of
Yeah, I
NIT,
bet
radio, and
from
television.
earlier this summer
And
when
please
I
stay
was
tuned
doing
for
Mondays or
the
Tuesdays,
Nebraska
it's
Life
gotten a whole
Hour.
lot better. It seems like, what are we going to read? You know,
Yeah.
I ended up reading like things that absolutely were ridiculous.
The rest of the week's pretty good though, Harold. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
Yes. So,
what are you gonna do?
well, we just get what we get. It got hot in here, didn't it?
Yeah.
I kept going out for water just so I could open the door.
Dude, we could have left it open, I suppose.
Oh, I would, except I'm always afraid somebody's going to go by.
Yeah,
and
laugh.
It's hot in there. We both lost about 5 pounds. We had this one, it just blows the hot air around.
Well, you should be, like, it's all your fault.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of sleep over it. This room is always, it feels great in here. Something's going on. Maybe you can shut your vent. You have a vent? No, there is.
Oh, well.
Soldier on. If you don't need to rinse it, but you need to try it. I hope so. I'll let you know for sure. I look at it again. I'm not sure. Okay, well, I've got them both down. Just no problem. Let me know when you know. I'll be fine. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
You're welcome, Paul.
What do you guys do with that? Yeah. Good luck. See you next time. Okay. I guess next week still, huh? Okay, good deal. I'll talk to you then.
See you later.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye, Paul.
You're welcome.
for lunch today, Paul? Oh, sounds pretty tasty.
Wow.
right here the whole time. Oh, yeah. I will. All right, I will see you tomorrow. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Have a good day.
You do.